Your breakthrough innovation could be hiding in plain sight. As an innovation expert, Vijay Govindarajan has studied how innovation works in some of the most well-respected institutions in the world. A native of India and an international business professor at Dartmouth College, Govindarajan, affectionately known as VG, had a breakthrough idea of his own. While serving as Chief Innovation Consultant for General Electric, he found that innovations built for the developing world counterintuitively had huge market potential when adapted to first world markets. Today, Vijay will bring us the method to the innovation madness and will unpack the execution side of innovation. After all, a big idea is the easy part, but real innovation is the big idea with legs on. Welcome, Vijay Govindarajan.
Well, VG, I have been so looking forward to you coming to be a part of the summit ever since you said yes, and then after we spent all that time at Dartmouth College talking about this. This is such a relevant subject matter, innovation. We just saw Exhibit A on innovation, but now we get a chance to talk to someone who's spent their entire career thinking about this subject matter. So one of the things, let's jump right into the subject matter here. You have a belief that says ongoing operations are at odds with innovation. In fact, they're always at conflict. Why is this the case? And give us your three-box framework that will help us understand this a little bit better.
You see, in my way of thinking, strategy is not about celebrating the past. It's not about celebrating the present. It's all about leadership in the future. And one thing we know, if strategy is about leadership in the future, the world keeps changing in the future. Therefore, if you want to be a leader in the future, you have to adapt to change. And another word for adapting to change is innovation. Therefore, I say strategy is innovation. And therefore, I always ask leaders, whether you are a leader of a church, or a president of a university, or a CEO of a large company like General Electric, think about all the projects you're executing today inside your organization and put them in three boxes. How many of the projects you're executing today will be in box one, which is all about managing the present, improving the efficiency of your current business models, which is all about operational excellence, Six Sigma, it's all about efficiency. How many of the projects you're executing today will be in box two, which is about selectively forget the past? And how many of the projects you're executing today will be in box three, which is about create the future? Manage the present, box one, selectively abandon the past, box two, and create the future, box three. And what I find working with organizations is they over-focus on box one, and they think they are doing strategy. And as I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, Jim, strategy has nothing to do with the past. It's got nothing to do with the present. It's got nothing to do with box one. It's all about box two and box three. Another word for box one is competition for the present. Another word for box two, box three is competition for the future. Competition for the present is all about efficiency. And competition for the future is all about innovation. And both are extremely important. Therefore, strategy to me is how do you create the future while managing the present? How do you simultaneously do innovation and efficiency?
Well, all of us feel like we need to do innovation. I mean, we just feel it intrinsically as leaders, but why is it so difficult?
You see, perhaps a metaphor might help us. Think about the gold medal winners in high jump in Olympics. You know, Olympics started in 1896, so we got about 100 years of data here. When you plot the 100 years of data of gold medal winners in high jump in Olympics, what you immediately see is there have been 4 fundamental innovations in the business model in the high jump industry. That is the reason why high jumpers could do things today that they cannot do in 1896. The very first high jump style was scissors. And if all that we have done so far is continuously improve the performance of scissors, we cannot achieve what we are achieving today. For instance, in 1896, when scissors was invented as the style in high jump, which is nothing but a hurdling motion, the best high jumpers could do was 4 feet 2 inches. Today, high jumpers go well beyond 9 feet. That is not possible with scissors because scissors is a hurdling motion. If you use a hurdling motion, the center of gravity will define how high you can lift your body. There is only so much Six Sigma you can do. So if you want to beat the center of gravity, you have to change fundamentally the business model. That's what somebody did and came up with a Western roll. And you see a picture of the Western roll here. If you don't understand that picture, what happens in the Western roll is you run up to the pole, you kick off of your right foot, you clear the bar, but unlike scissors, you land on your right foot. So if you're going to kick off of your right foot and land on your right foot, that means your back is to the pole. And that was in vogue for about 25 years until someone invented the Eastern roll, which came to be called the straddle. And straddle was in vogue for about 25 years until someone came up with Fosbury flop. And when you see the picture of Fosbury flop, it's a completely different way to do high jump because you're running up to the pole, launching yourself, twisting your body, and then head is the first thing that clears the bar. In fact, we were told in high jump, leg must clear the bar first. For 100 years we did it. Fosbury flop completely innovated the high jump style. This is the central challenge, Jim. We have to improve the efficiency of our scissors today, but also we need to do some experiments today to transform the scissors into a Fosbury flop.
Let's talk about let's get a deeper layer down in terms of the conflict between the scissors and the Fosbury flop, ongoing operations and thinking about the future. You really talk about how these things are at odds. It's almost like the innovation is a virus to ongoing operations. So question is, I think normal thinking would just say, well, let's just embed innovation in our ongoing operations and we'll end up with the Fosbury flop. You take a different stance on that.
You see, when you are outstanding in scissors, what happens is a dominant logic develops inside the organization. And by dominant logic, what I mean is the kind of people you recruit, the kind of processes you have, the kind of performance measures you have, the kind of organization you have. That's what I mean by dominant logic. And dominant logic is a double-edged sword. Dominant logic is extremely useful in continued execution of your scissors. But left unchecked, the dominant logic creates the self-imposed boundaries. You cannot see new customers. You cannot see new possibilities. Therefore, the central leadership challenge, certainly church is a 2,000-year-old organization, and we have enjoyed enormous success. Our scissors has really hummed for a long time. But the key is, how do you preserve the dominant logic, which is still useful, but at the same time overcome it? That is the central challenge.
Now, a lot of people say that innovation is all about ideas. You know, it's like saying what Joseph was talking about earlier, influence is just about motivation. Well, in the same case, you think differently. Innovation is more than ideas. Unpack that a little bit.
You see, innovation is not just ideas. Innovation, people mistake it as creativity. Innovation is commercializing creativity. Innovation is about executing creativity. Therefore, creativity is the idea. Innovation is commercializing the idea. Thomas Alva Edison, the co-founder of General Electric, put it very well. He said, innovation is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And he ought to know, because he was the greatest innovator of all times. And that 1% inspiration is the idea, and 99% perspiration is the execution of the idea. Therefore, I say bulk of the challenge lies in the execution.
Well, you have an innovation equation that kind of outlines the different aspects of what is needed to, in fact, make an innovation come to life and get implemented. So what's that equation? Let's talk through that.
You see, the innovation is ideas plus execution. And the execution has the leader, the team, and the plan. And unless you get those three right, especially the team and the plan, the idea is just an idea. Therefore, my whole work has been on that 99% perspiration. How do you get the execution right? Jim, the point is, in box one, which is your core business, which is your scissors, which is what I call your performance engine, there is execution. That is day-to-day execution. That's where dominant logic helps. Box three is fundamental innovation. That's your Fosbury flop. That requires execution. That is what I call innovation execution. For innovation execution, we have to constitute a team and a plan which is fundamentally different than the way we constitute team and a plan for box one.
Right. Okay, let's take a look at each of those three in a little more detail. It's idea plus a leader, plus a team, plus a plan. One of the myths about a leader that you talk about goes like this. Effective innovation leaders are subversives fighting the system. Kind of a common mantra that captures this is just break all the rules. We hear a lot about that. Again, you beg to differ on it. So what kind of leader is an innovation leader?
You see, making innovation happen is not just the responsibility of one person, the leader. And many times, the innovation leaders believe their job is to really break all rules and be a subvert. That may make for a good Hollywood script, but really, innovation leaders have to be humble. They have to actually work with the bureaucracy, with the performance engine. Therefore, the role of leaders is not to subvert, but to harness the great capabilities of the core business or the performance engine.
Now, there's two assumptions that innovation leaders often describe that are innovation killers. Talk about those assumptions.
You see, the two big assumptions which are absolute killers for innovation is, first, assume that innovation can happen inside the performance engine. Performance engine is built for one purpose, which is to promote efficiency. Innovation is the opposite of efficiency. It's all about flexibility. Therefore, the first mistake is to assume performance engine can do fundamental innovation. It cannot. The second mistake is not constitute the team and the plan correctly.
Well, and you say, I mean, as a leader, I'm thinking, why can't you have the existing operation incrementally improve and have those people have as part of their job, do your job better next year than this year and keep improving? But you say you actually have to separate out a team, make them completely dedicated to thinking about an innovation, completely separate people, different responsibilities. Talk about the team and why that's the case.
You see, the scissors can do innovation. As long as you don't change the business model of the high jump style, scissors people can continue to improve performance of scissors. But what they cannot do is to make scissors into a Fosbury flop, because that is a non-linear shift. This is like newspaper going into the digital space, because a New York Times as a newspaper and New York Times digital are fundamentally different business models. Therefore, the New York Times newspaper is very good in improving efficiency of the newspaper business, but it cannot really create or invent the New York Times digital. That is why you need a separate team and a separate plan.
Okay, now, there's the organization, the performance engine, there's a separate team. What are the kinds of people you put on that team? And what are the linkages back to the performance engine? Are they completely independent? Talk about the appropriate ties.
You see, just going back to my example of New York Times, just as an illustration. See, in 1995, the Times Company wanted to go for a box 3 experiment called New York Times Digital. If you stop to think about it for a moment, New York Times Digital is not a newspaper company on a technology platform. It is a technology play. Whereas newspaper is a newspaper. Therefore, you need to create a distinct team. If you want New York Times Digital to happen, you have to create a distinct team, which is distinct and separate from the performance engine. What does it mean? It means you can recruit the right capabilities, You don't need to recruit the same type of people who join the newspaper industry. You can have different processes. You can have different metrics. You can have different culture. Almost assume you are a Silicon Valley startup. If you're a Silicon Valley startup and want to create an online business, how would you set up that organization? That's what I mean by set up a dedicated team which is distinct. However, that dedicated team has to be linked to the performance engine, because there are some performance engine assets that can be leveraged for the benefit of this dedicated team. Again, going back to the New York Times example, there is content from New York Times that can be used on the web. Not just today's content, think about 100 years of digital archives. A Silicon Valley startup cannot ever imagine having that wealth of content. So you have to link this dedicated team to the performance engine, and that is going to create all kinds of conflicts. Because after all, the dedicated team is a new logic. Performance engine has a dominant logic. And you are asking the new logic to interact with the dominant logic. It's going to produce all kinds of conflicts. Managing that conflict is what determines whether there is a healthy partnership or not.
Do you have any shared staff at all with that dedicated team and the performance engine?
In fact, you have to have the shared staff, because after all, the performance engine assets, at least some parts of its assets, are useful for this breakthrough innovation. Because remember, my three-box thinking, box 2 is about selective forgetting. That means there are some assets of the performance engine that can go to benefit the box 3 business. And therefore, that is where the shared staff comes. There has got to be some sharing between your core business, performance engine, and this new dedicated team.
Who's paying for all the cost of this innovation at this point?
You see, this is one of the most important things companies forget, is when you start a box 3 experiment, the cash is coming from the performance engine. Therefore, performance engine is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Scissors is a good thing. Dominant logic is a very good thing, because that is what is generating the resources you can invest in the future. Similarly, the box 3 experiment, even though it is losing money today, it is extremely important to create the future. See, Jim, my point is, box 3 creating the future essentially says future is now. Future is not about what an organization does in the future. Therefore, any organization, you have to protect your performance engine today, but at the same time plant some seeds. And hopefully one of those seeds will grow into a tree and give you fruits 5 years from now. But if you want a tree 5 years from now, the job starts today. Job doesn't start 5 years today. That is the essence of having a performance engine and a dedicated team today, so that we can make money today, but also create an exciting future tomorrow.
Now, there's a mistake that often leaders make in selecting people for that dedicated team. What are some biases that we should have in selecting the right people to be on that dedicated team?
You see, the most important thing to remember, the dedicated team is created for a different purpose. It is created for a purpose for fundamental innovation. The performance engine is about your core business. Therefore, be prepared and be courageous to recruit people from the outside if it is needed, because you're building new capabilities. You are breaking the sacred cows. You are selectively forgetting some of the dominant logic. Therefore, do not simply transfer everybody from your performance engine onto this dedicated team. Then you will struggle in the forgetting challenge. Therefore, be bold in how you select people, what kinds of processes you have, what kinds of performance metric you have. Be as distinct and separate for the task at hand.
Now, there are a lot of examples of independent teams that get set up and they get going, and then they run into a thing that you called organizational memory. Talk about that.
You see, when you set up a team, the team, if it is constituted correctly, it can help to fight organizational memory, because the team is almost like a Silicon Valley startup. You've got a team there which can work on the box 3. However, the team should not be isolated from your core business. Therefore, it is going to interact with your organizational memory because it has got to borrow some critical assets. And now you're creating a conflict between this new logic and your organizational memory. Conflicts are not bad in organizations. Conflicts are healthy, provided you know how to manage them. Therefore, you manage them productively, then you are able to harness the best of your current business for the benefit of your future.
Let's talk about that last piece, plan. There's a myth that goes like this that you talk about. Innovation is unmanageable chaos. And then you go on to say that because ongoing operations are repeatable and innovations are non-routine, you got to think differently about organizing. And then because ongoing operations are predictable, while innovations are uncertain, you got to think differently about planning. And so you talk about zero-based planning. We know about zero-based budgeting. Talk to us about zero-based planning and organizing.
You see, let's just step back for a moment. The planning is really connected to what is the real challenge in box one. You see, box one is your current business. In your current business, you are responding to what I call clear signals or linear changes in the industry or in your environment. Box three, which is your future, which is the Fosbury flop, box three is always in response to what I call weak signals, non-linear shifts. Because a box three is a bet on the future. Today, for instance, in higher education, which is I am part of, there is a box three experiments going on, which is called online. The higher education is going to be disrupted by digital technologies. But all that we have today is weak signals. By weak signals, what I mean is we don't know the size of the market, we don't know what the customer wants, we don't know how to produce the product or develop the service. A lot of things unknown. Therefore, the job in box three is to learn to resolve assumptions, learn to resolve unknowns. That is the planning challenge. In box one, I can plan because it is a response to clear signals. Box three is in response to weak signals. Therefore, the whole planning process has to be about testing assumptions. You develop assumptions and you test them. And when you're testing assumptions, the golden rule is spend a little, learn a lot, because you got a lot of assumptions to test. So that, I say, is the clear plan challenge, is about low-cost experimentation.
Okay, so if I get it right, you have the performance engine that's paying for all the bills today. You set up an independent team, and they're doing all this learning, and they're not making any money at all. How do you track and judge and evaluate whether or not that innovation is working, and you should keep investing in it, or you should pull the plug?
You see, the key is this. The performance engine, you can evaluate them on short-term financial results if you're a business organization. Because a performance engine, the system is a known system. You're just optimizing that system. Box three is an experiment. You cannot evaluate the box three if you're a business organization based on short-term financial results, because it is really a bet for the future. That does not mean a box three, you let them off the hook. There can be a very strong discipline to evaluate them. It should be evaluation based on their ability to learn. What I mean by that is, can you set up your hypothesis or your assumptions? Can you set up low-cost experiments to test those hypotheses, convert assumptions into knowledge? Therefore, the way you evaluate the performance of a leader of the innovation experiment is their ability to conduct low-cost experiments and continuously learn. Therefore, we can have a very rigorous methodology to do that as well.
Okay, you talk about reverse innovation, and you even wrote, your latest book is called Reverse Innovation. What's reverse innovation? How can it impact our organizations?
You see, to me, I contend reverse innovation is going to be perhaps the single biggest opportunity for organizations in the next several decades. What this is reverse innovation is an example of a box three innovation. You see, historically, multinationals innovated in a rich country like the US. and sold those products in a poor country like India. Reverse innovation is about doing exactly the opposite. It's about innovating in a poor country like India and selling those products in a rich country like the US. When you stop to think about it, this is completely counterintuitive. Why? Because it is perfectly logical to see why a poor man would want a rich man's product. Rich man is driving a car, poor man wants a car. But it is not that logical to see why a rich man would want a poor man's product. As an example, as to why reverse innovation holds such a key for future is think about healthcare in this country. In America, a rich country in the world, healthcare is based on very high cost, not necessarily best-in-class quality, and we cannot guarantee universal access. 60 million Americans are left out. In my research, Jim, I have found there are over 100 experiments going on in poor countries, which are based on ultra-low-cost healthcare, world-class quality healthcare, and universal access. Wouldn't the rich people not be interested in learning about this? This is the way I would put it. This is the way I would put it. You see, we need to fundamentally change our definition of innovation, Jim. We thought innovation is about value for money. I say innovation is about value for many. And when you think of value for many, you have to do more with less. You have to do a lot more with a lot less for a lot of people. There is a cardiac hospital in Bangalore, India, which does open heart surgery for $2,000. In the US, open heart surgery will cost $150,000. Because their cost is 50 times less, doesn't mean their quality is 50 times less. I don't even know how you can do a poor quality heart surgery. In fact, one measure of quality in heart surgery is mortality rates 30 days after surgery. For this hospital in Bangalore, their mortality rates 30 days after surgery is 1.2%. And the US average is 2%. So their quality is on par, even slightly ahead. My point is, and they don't deny access to anybody. They treat hundreds of thousands of heart patients. My point is, we have to think about innovation as doing a lot more with a lot less for a lot of people. You see, personally, I believe the number one problem in the world today is income inequality. That's the number one problem. The disparity in income between the rich and the poor has reached enormously alarming proportions. We, great corporations in this country and elsewhere, we use our technology to produce products for the rich. I challenge corporations. Why don't you use your great technologies and great capabilities to produce products for the poor, thereby close the income inequality? And I say reducing income inequality has to be the highest form of human achievement. And that is the essence of reverse innovation.
Wow, thanks so much. One final question. Vijay, you dedicate your whole life to teaching others. Why did you decide to be a teacher?
You see, all of us are informed by our upbringing. And I grew up in a small village in India. I come from an extremely poor family. And I realized fairly early on that India has so many problems and we have so few resources. Therefore, I realized the only way India can solve its problems is through innovation. There is no other way, because we don't have enough resources to throw at our problem. Therefore, when I came into this country, I dedicated my life to do research and understand the secret sauce behind innovation. And I thought teaching is the best vehicle for me to have the highest leverage, because I can only do so much, but if I can teach, I can spread my message to a lot of people, including the 10,000 who are here and 100,000 who are listening on the satellite here. and what I found, Jim, quickly, is when I came to the US as a country is got the secret for box tree thinking. That's how this country is built, isn't it? This country is built on innovation. And I am a good example. US brings people from all over the world, no matter what their background is. And we give them the opportunity to really spread our wings. I still remember, I came into this country in the late 70s. I had $11 in my pocket. Maybe my parents' life savings, they gave it to me. And I took a flight from India to the US. It was not a non-stop flight. It stopped in London. And I saw Cadbury's milk chocolate. I have never had milk chocolate in my life. So I was tempted. But it costed $6. So I was wondering, should I spend $6 out of my $11 to buy this bar of chocolate? Then I told myself, if I landed in Boston with $5 or $11, what difference does it make? So I bought that bar of chocolate. Part of what I'm saying is I spent 50% of my assets on a bar of chocolate. You get people like that. I am just one of millions of such people. And then give them the opportunity. Isn't that not how we built this great country? I still remember, Jim, the very first week I was in the US, I got a letter from the Publishers Clearinghouse. I didn't even open that letter. On the envelope, it said, Vijay Govindarajan, you've already won $10 million. I said, I love America. One day I have $5, next day I have $10 million. But jokes apart, that is the essence of America. The essence of America is humility. We are a country which is built on humility. We take capabilities, knowledge from any part of the world and invite them to the US. We have to have the same humility if we want to continue to maintain America as a great country, and that is really the essence of reverse innovation, accepting globalization of ideas and innovation from any part of the world.
Well, thank you so much, Vijay. I appreciate your life, who you are, the example that you are to us of being open-minded, humble leaders to accept innovations from wherever they are, and then to have the rigor to implement those innovations in our own settings, in our own life, in our own organizations and churches. So thanks for letting us be a Dartmouth class of students to you this morning.